I had some free time on my hands, so I may have gone to my second channel, and I covered the lore of a certain currently popular game. So if you are interested, you may wanna check it out. Everyone knows that I found someone I love. It's a person I couldn't live without. And it's the only person in the world who thought that English is my native language.
Wait, Necrit, are you from Scotland? Are you Scottish?
Report to the
Or
ship
do you
as
just
soon as
live
possible.
there?
We're bang, okay?
Valentine's Day is here, and with it we can cover topics that would usually sound awkward. Such as, let's talk about all the characters in League of Legends that may have a love affair. Now, veteran viewers might know that we have done a similar video years ago. But we made that one back when half of the characters still had outdated lore. Now that 98% of League's champions are canon within its universe, we can properly talk about who's doing what with whom. First of all, few clarifications. We will only talk about love affairs in the main storyline. We will avoid all alternative universes because this video would be too long. So no Odyssey Jinx and Kayn, no Odyssey Kayn and Ahri, and no Star Guardian Ezreal and Lux. Also, it may happen that I miss a couple of characters. League's universe is pretty massive at this point, so if you remember someone I didn't, feel free to correct me in the comments. And finally, let me quickly mention some couples that were teased in the past, but are not canon anymore. Twisted Fate and Evelynn never met. That's the end of that list. And don't get me started on Jarvan and Shyvana, Ezreal and Shyvana, or Riven and CZECH. Those have never happened. Now, we got a long list of champions and characters that are canon in some way. So, let's get on it. Going in alphabetical order, the first champion is Ahri. Ahri's story is very simple. She's an orphaned Vastaya that was left alone in the woods. There, she was adopted by a pack of foxes. So not only did she not meet a single human until much later in her life, she also had to learn how to use her magic on her own. So she can be quite destructive with it. The problem is that she also has an unsatiable hunger for human essences. She can hardly befriend a human, because she usually ends up killing them. Not because she would want to, but because she has the uncontrollable hunger. We even know about one of Ahri's lovers. It was a man she dearly cared for. But on one romantic night near a beautiful lake, Ahri's mind just snapped and she drained his soul, together with his emotions and memories. Later in the story, Ahri went to a garden that hosted flowers capable of deleting your memories. She wanted the flowers to take away the memory of her killing her lover, but in the end she made up her mind. So now she has to live with that gruesome image for the rest of her life. An interesting bonus is that Edward Santangelo, an explorer from Piltover, saw Ahri and he was immediately charmed by her. We even got this drawing of her in his book. Next one on the list is Akali. Well, not exactly her, but we can talk about her parents a bit. See, in Akali's story, we never learn anything about her father. The story only mentions Mayhem, the Fist of Shadow, and as the story says, her partner, Tano. Now it seems like both Mayhem and Tano are women, which brings up the question, how is Akali here? In theory, Tano might be a guy, but then again, he was referred to as her partner and not husband. That brings up the question, why? So we legitimately have no idea who Akali's father is. Next on the list we have Ashe and Tryndamere. These two champions are very interesting now because for years, and I really mean for years at this point, Ashe and Tryndamere used to be married for political reasons. In the past there was no romance involved, but that's not the case anymore. In the new universe, Riot decided to spice up their relationship a bit. We will cover their stories in more detail later, but to summarize what's happening. Ashe became a War Mother, a leader of a Freljordian tribe. But War Mothers are expected to be wed to warriors from different tribes. This bond would create stronger alliances and it would make both tribes stronger overall. So when the time came, Ashe decided to choose Tryndamere, an uncivilized barbarian from a slaughtered tribe. The reason why she chose him was because when Tryndamere arrived in the Avarosan villages, he threw himself into as many dueling pits as he could find, to prove that his people are strong and relentless. At that, he succeeded. Even though the majority of his barbarian tribe was dead, Tryndamere proved to Ashe and everyone around that his raw strength is almost inhuman. Many even believed that he was possessed by black magic, but Ashe chose him nonetheless. At the beginning it was purely for political reasons. Ashe had absolutely no feelings for him. Tryndamere was still quite uncivilized for her standards, but it was good to have someone showcasing power beside her. But as time went on and the two ruled over the lands they rallied, it seems as though Ashe and Tryndamere are finding a common bond. It isn't further expanded upon yet, but we know that some kind of romantic relationship is developing there, which is something the story never mentioned before. Next we have Azir. just like all the rulers that are expected to continue their bloodline. Azir also had a few children, which means that he also had a wife. But interestingly enough, we have some information about his mother, but not the wife. We know their relationship was possibly deep, because we know about the last moments Azir spent with his family. In one of Azir's stories, there is a scene where he returns to the Sun Disk and the sands show him what happened before his death. The sands reveal his wife and his children standing nearby, as Azir was getting ready to ascend. But seconds before the ritual was complete, Xerath betrayed him and he unleashed the full potential of the Sun Disk, destroying the Empire for millennia to come. The interesting bit is that the sands showed Azir the faces of his wife and children before they were annihilated. So the fact that he probably deeply loved his wife makes it all the worse. Because not only does he have to live again with the image of her death in his mind, but before his wife was vaporized, she was also heavy with another child. Now, if their bloodline was vaporized, that brings up a different question. How did Azir cheat his wife to get Sivir somewhere down the road? Now don't worry, the next story won't be any brighter. Next up we have Brand. Brand's real name was Kagan Rode. He was the son of a Freljordian witch, but unfortunately, he lived in the part of Freljord where people didn't appreciate witches, shamans or dark magic in general. It's the part of Freljord that's surprisingly close to Demacia. Here, when necessary, people would use their healing powers, but at the same time they would always shun them, making the shamans live alone on the edges of their territory, despite them being necessary for survival of the village. So from his young age, Kagan wasn't a popular kid in his village. But that doesn't mean that he didn't have a crush. He fell in love with Zvana, a girl from a tribe that migrated to his village. So because she was new, she didn't see Kagan as a spawn of evil. She was the only girl in the village that kinda liked him. Years passed and both of them were nearly adults. Every year there is a season during which the girls would wait at the shores and the boys would dance to impress them. This is how the weddings were decided. But despite Kagan being by far the most resilient dancer in the village, Zvana was given to another guy by her father. She didn't really have a choice. Kagan had a bad reputation, so Zvana's father wouldn't let him have her, but she pretended to be happy with the other person just so Kagan wouldn't get furious. That didn't help and Kagan punched her father really hard. Things escalated when Kagan's mother died and he burned down his entire village for being racist towards magic. He meant to only burn down the leader of the village together with his house. But the flames spread and he later found out that he also burned Zvana, together with the other guy and the child they had together. Now let's move on to Camille. When Camille was still 100% human, she was in love with Hakim Naderi, a brilliant engineer that could also do miracles with hextech technology. He was also from Shurima. Camille was part of the Pharaoh's family, a house that had a massive influence on Piltover, and Hakim worked for them as their inventor, so the two spent a lot of time together. But Camille had to become the principal intelligencer of her family, which is something like an enforcer of her family's will. And in order to be a good intelligencer, her body was to be altered. It was Hakim who was tasked to do the operation, and so he had to change the body of someone he loved into something nearly inhuman. He couldn't bear the fact that he essentially deleted the soul of a person he held dear. He replaced her heart in fact. So Hakim left before Camille woke up from the operation. That was the last time the two ever met. Many years later, during a mission, Camille was certain she found out that Hakim was back in Piltover. But during her investigation, she realized it wasn't Hakim. It was his nephew who looked much like him. She learned that Hakim never got married and he always carried her picture with him, to the day he died. So now Camille took his nephew under her wings to keep him as the only link to her lost lover. Next on the list is Darius. Now Darius might be a strong and brutal warrior. He might also be one of the 3 leaders of Noxus, but he also has a soft heart. During the Noxian comic, we learned that Darius had a love affair with his childhood friend. Her name was Wynn. When they were still kids, they were recruited into the Noxian army. For years they conquered lands for the sake of conquering, and also because Darkwill was a mad leader. But that didn't stop their relationship from developing. We even got this scene from 19 years ago. This was before the Noxian army assigned each of them to a war front on the opposite side of the empire. 10 years later, the invasion of Ionia began and Quill lost her arm there. This also made her lose faith in the empire and she went rogue. She conquered her home city on her own and she held it hostage from the rest of the army. When Darius came to negotiate with her, he learned that he sent Quill's son to die in a campaign to conquer Freljord. He didn't know that before. And the story made it look like Quill wanted to tell Darius that it wasn't just her son. It looked like she wanted to tell him that it was also his son, the one that came from the previous scene. But Invedia, her second in command, cut her throat before she could say anything. She likely did it so that this information wouldn't break Darius as well. If he knew that he sent his own son to die in the war against Freljord, maybe Darius would have gone rogue too. Next we have Elise. Elise is from a Noxian family, specifically House Kythera of the Immortal Bastion. Her family was incredibly powerful, and when the time came, Elise was to be wed to another powerful house. This time it was House Zavan. With this wedding, both of the houses grew in power, but while her husband also held a lot of influence, everyone knew who really led the house. Soon he became a joke in the Noxian society. At first he ignored it, but in time he couldn't bear standing in the shadow of Elise. During one seemingly normal dinner, he poisoned Elise's wine, and he told her that he would give her the antidote, if she gave up her political life, and she passed over the influence. See, he underestimated Elise's dedication to her family, so he was surprised when Elise rammed a knife into his chest without a warning. By the time she found the antidote, the damage was already done. Her face and skin were ravaged by necrotic flesh. The rest of her story is not important for this video. LeBlanc showed her the spider god of Shadow Isles and her beauty was restored. Next we have Evelynn. She's a demon. Not only does she not care for feelings, she also kills humans for their essences. Now let's pick up the pace with the rest of the people on this list. We are nearing the 10-minute mark, so we already pleased the gods of YouTube. I don't want this video to be too long. When it comes to Fiora, there were many who wanted to be her husband, but the story made it seem like she couldn't care less for marriage. She is more into honor and duels that bring more honor to her family. Also, there is a theory that she might be into women. That's why she denied every man. Swain kinda hints at it too.
She spurned so many suitors. I wonder they did not see why.
Then there is Gangplank and Ilaoi. The two were lovers when they were younger, but Ilaoi became a Kraken priestess, so her duties took over her private life. She still loves him, but there isn't much free time to get back into their relationship. Then we have Garen and Katarina. The two likely never met, so not only is Ilaoi's quote wrong now, but many fanfictions also don't make sense anymore. Next is Jax. Jax himself probably didn't do anything, but his lore revealed that back in the Icathian days, the main character of Where Icathia Once Stood, called Aksamukvar Choikoari Ikathor, had a fun night with girls before they marched into the war against the Ascended. I'm not sure if Jax also had a fun night though. And speaking of Icathia, Kassadin had a wife. I mean, obviously Kaisa had to be born somehow, but we don't know anything about this wife. So that's that. Next is Lucian. Everyone knows that Lucian and Senna were lovers, but many may not know that Lucian made a pretty obvious penis joke in his story, while talking to Senna. Like, he didn't even try to hide it. Then, a well-known pair is Nico and Nidalee. I mean, we shouldn't call them a pair, in any meaning in that regard. Despite what you may find on the internet, Nico and Nidalee never did anything. It is true that Nico, being an ancient creature that doesn't even understand the concept of genders, prefers women. But I'm pretty sure the ancient Vastaya don't reproduce the way you think they do. So in the end, what does it really matter what Nico is into? In her lens, the only real difference between two beings is their soul. Then there is Rakan and Xayah. Now these two Vastaya are much further down the evolution chain, so they are much closer to humans. I mean relatively to the Vastaya Shirei, which was their ancient form. There isn't much to say about these two, besides the fact that at the beginning Xayah thought that Rakan was an idiot. Also the two met in Volonko, a town you can find on the map. Another rumored couple is Rumble and Tristana. I say rumored because not only is their love one-sided, Rumble is into Tristana, but Tristana seemingly ignores him. But it's also because the story never mentioned these two together. The only hints are Rumble's quotes, so until the Bandle City update arrives, this one isn't real. But what is very well real is Varus. Varus himself might be a corrupted Ascended Warrior, aka a Darkin, but his physical body is combined with Valmar and Kai, two Ionian lovers who are also brilliant hunters. This story is quite long and incredibly tragic. We have a massive video on it, so you know where to go if you are interested. I highly recommend getting into that story, it's a really good one. Next we have to mention Warwick. It seems like before he was kidnapped by Singed, Warwick may have had a daughter. Now there are many theories as to who that daughter might be, including a theory that it is Jinx, but there are no real proofs to confirm anything, so Warwick is one massive mystery. The last love affair based on a champion is Yasuo. Well, not Yasuo himself, but Yasuo came out of a mysterious love affair. We know who Yasuo's mother was, but his father was a man who just randomly appeared in the village, and then he ran away. So technically Yasuo is a bastard. Practically, he is not. In Ionia, marriage isn't necessary for couples to have kids. In those lands, your love is the real bond. Nobody cares if you have a ring on your finger. Actually, that might explain the Akali situation. But what's interesting is that Yasuo's father may still be somewhere out there alive. He might also be a powerful swordsman just like Yasuo. And the very last couple that we know of is in the story The City of Iron and Glass, a longer story that depicts normal life in the upper classes of Zone. It's a story that we never covered on this channel because it never had a massive impact on the world, but it is an amazing story that sets up what Zone is all about. Either way, the main character called Wynn had a charming relationship with Kaz, an orphan girl from the lower quarters of Zone. This story really reminded me of the older classics from the Victorian era. It is almost as if Oliver Twist took place in Zone. But that's going to be it for this video. I have no doubt there will be a long discussion in the comments about Zaya laying eggs and other inappropriate things. But I will not get into that discussion, because we still need a topic for the next year. Hey, did you know that we have social media and Twitch where we talk about other League facts and stories? And did you know that we have neat mugs and shirts too? The links to all of that will be below. And as always, thank you, come again.